this is Fiona Belsham back again with a second instructional video on how to make the Scrubs wash bag. This is a no mess, no fuss version, and I'm going to be showing you really quickly how to make the Scrubs wash bag. This is one of the ones that I made yesterday that you can see in the longer video. If you want more information and explanation, please go to that one, it's much more detailed. So the bags, when they are finished, measure about 52 centimetres by 48. Here's one that's filled with clothing. They should easily fit a set of scrubs in there. They're really fast and economical to make. The materials for one bag only cost £1.25. So on the table I've got 5 metres of polycotton in varying prints, and also the other tools and bits and pieces required to make the bag. You can make 2 out of a metre. So first things first, cotton tape, which is going to be used to pull the bag shut. You need a 2.5 metre length for the 2 bags, and I'm just going to cut that really quickly. I'm cutting it on an angle. If you zoom in, you should be able to see what I'm doing. Just from the folded edge, from the thumb up towards your fingers, to create a chevron. This should hopefully reduce fraying when these bags go through the wash. Don't need the ruler anymore. You can see there from the ruler we've got a metre of fabric. If you're wondering why the pink stuff is sticking out and it appears to be more than a metre, I promise you it's not. If you need that explanation, then you need to go to the other video. I'm not going to be explaining that right now. So we need this cut in half again, because we need the amount for 2 bags. Find the centre point, snip it again, thumb to fingers, keep your fingers out of the way, and you've got 2 pieces of tape. So as I said, on the table we've got 5 metres of fabric, we've got a safety pin which we're going to need, a marker pen, something that contrasts the colour of the fabric so that you can see it really clearly as a starting point, and something to measure with. I'm using one of these nifty little sewing gauges. So I'm just going to pull back. So the first job, once you've got your fabric laid out, obviously I've taken a minute or 2 to lay this all out beautifully. You didn't need to see me doing that, and I've pre-cut the first 3 metres of fabric, but I'm just going to show you the last 2 to how I did it. So finger press that edge to give you a crease to cut against, and you can just whip through these, pile up as many metres of fabric as you like, and you can just whip through these as quickly as you like, and then take a good pair of sharp scissors and literally just slash the fabric in half down that folded edge as quickly as that. Okay, I am going to take a piece of this one. So although I'm only going to show you how to make one bag, I'll be explaining as we go through how I would do things differently if I was doing this on a batch method to make 10 or 20 bags, which I probably will be doing later on this morning. But we've got the fabric laid down face down on the table, and the next job really is to just measure. So we've got the selvage end facing you, and I'm just going to set my little sewing gauge at 1 inch, and I'm going to fold that down where I think 1 inch might be. I've done this 1 or 2 times before, so that was pretty spot on. But for anybody who's worked with polycotton before, we know that it's not brilliant at creasing. So actually, for efficiency, and if I was doing this as a batch, I would pile up 10 or 20 pieces of fabric, and I would take them to the ironer, and I would just iron it 1 inch down all the way along. So I'm going to do that. So here we are on the ironing board, and if you've got your pile of these, you could literally pile them up like I did for cutting the fabric in half, slightly set apart, and just run your iron down and press them all really quickly. It'll be a real time saver when it comes to sewing up all the casings. Okay, so we've got that edge nicely pressed. The next step then is to fold it in half across the width, and then line up the corner. We've got the fabric right sides together apart from that pressed edge, and I just want to make a mark here just as a reminder to stop sewing when you get to that point. So on both sides, just make a mark with a nice bright pen. That should be, if you wanted to just measure that, that should be at the 5 centimetre mark or 2 inches. So the reason I'm marking that is because I'm going to use very few pins in this, and I always start pinning mine where I'm going to start sewing. So I always orient to the top left hand corner, which is always the bit that I start on the machine. So I'm going to put pin in the corner, and one down this side, which I'm going to have to manipulate a little bit, because as anybody who does a lot of sewing knows, polycotton's notoriously twisty because of the manufacturing process, but it's ideal for this job. So we've got 3 pins, and now we are going to start sewing. So literally going to start sewing at the folded edge, along pivot, along back stitch, a little bit more than you would at normal when you get to your 5 centimetre marker, which I've just drawn on with a pen. Okay, to the sewing machine. So I'm just sliding the fabric under the machine. We're using a 1 centimetre seam allowance. I'm using the edge of my presser foot to help with getting a nice straight seam, and I'm just going to sew around the 2 sides of the bag. Back stitch, and off we go. Now you don't need to watch me sewing all of this, so I'm just going to speed it up and talk to you when we get to the next step. Just a reminder, when you're coming up to the corner, slow your sewing down, pivot. If you need to, just use the hand wheel for the last stitches. Pivot on the corner, drop it down and go again. Okay, so I've just back stitched there at our 5 centimetre marker. You can see I've left the end open, cut my threads, and I'm taking the fabric off the machine. Now we're going to sew the casing, and we get to take advantage of that lovely pressed edge. We do just need to finger press this tiny little bit of seam here, which is just above the finished edge. This is the only place I'm going to put pins to sew this, just to hold this down so that we don't get it slipping when we start to sew. We need to do the same on the other side. Fold in the seam allowance, finger press, and then fold it back on itself till it meets the last bit of stitching. And the advantage of pressing means I'm not using any other pins, so we're just going to slide that back on the machine, anchor in place with the needle. This time I'm just watching the inside left toe for my seam allowance, and we've got the folded edge, so we know we're roughly at 1 inch or 2.5 centimetres, so we can just sew. To the start, just whip out that last pin and then finish with some back stitching. Cut threads. And the last bit of sewing, I'm just going to turn it round, adjust the machine to a zigzag stitch. Just fold in the top of the seam edge there. And sew down your L-shaped seam in a zigzag. And here we are with the last little bit. Just going to back stitch that there, and then it's done. So if I was batch sewing these, I'd sew all the seams first, then I would sew all of my casings, and then I would sew all of the zigzag edge overlocking. I said these were easy to sew. That's it. 3 bits to sew: your seam, your casing, and then your over edging, and that's all the sewing done. And to finish the bag, all that we need to do now is trim off any straggly threads, of which there are none. Trim off any straggly threads, thread you tape through. This actually, ironically, is probably the bit that takes the longest. The easiest way to just make sure you don't lose your tape by fraying and shredding, just fold over the end, zip it into one side of the casing, holding on to the back of the safety pin with your right hand, and then just, if you've never done this before, just keep pushing the pin through your left hand thumb and forefinger, or indeed your right hand thumb and forefinger, if you're left-handed and need to do this the other way around. Okay. Bump in. Tie a knot quite close to the end of your tapes so that this doesn't get pulled back in when you are just equalising and taking up all the slack. There we go. Turn the bag inside out, reach inside, push one of your thumbs really into the corner and then push back down on that hard with your index finger and flip it. Same the other side, push out with your thumb. I didn't trim these off, so we've got the excess into the corner, so they're not going to look as square as they could, but push through with your thumb, push back with your finger, and that's not looking too bad. And there we go, one completed Scrubs bag, which probably took me about 5 minutes to sew.